Evangelion. There's a certain inevitability to Evangelion. You could begin an innocent conversation about watching Sailor Moon as a kid, and it will somehow devolve into the first time you saw Evangelion. All anime roads lead to Evangelion. So unavoidable is the series that Toonami basically strong-armed themselves into showing it during Giant Robot Week. You can't just talk about Evangelion. And certainly not if you're an internet asshole who has thousands of people pedantically scrutinizing every syllable uttered. Hence my apprehension. I am going to shoot this elephant in the room right now. I don't like Evangelion. I make no secret of it. However, I can recognize it's important to the culture. Hell, if the franchise was flawless, it wouldn't be nearly as talked about as it was, and still is. At the end of the day, Anime Abandon is a museum of anime's past, and I'm the weary curator here to play tour guide. Sometimes a museum houses fine art, and sometimes someone takes a picture of a turd and puts it in a nice frame. If you manage to escape the gravitational pull of Hideki Anno's psychosis so far, allow me to be the poor motherfucker that finally drags you in. Evangelion started as, well, a Monster of the Day show back in 1995, and through a director's crumbling mental state, irresponsible budgetary splurging, and way too much fan involvement, not limited to death threats over the course of the show, transformed itself into a near shapeless blob of navel-gazing pretension and existentialism. That might be the most highbrow paragraph I've ever written. Can't have that continuing, can we, floppy donkey dicks? So monumentally out of control was the budget for the series that the last two episodes were literally nothing but the characters of the show sitting on a folding chair talking shit about themselves, until through a contrived series of half-thought-out statements, the main character Shinji says he is him.
I want to be myself. I want to continue existing in this world. My life is worth living here.
Congratulations! Congratulations! Congratulations!
Congratulations!
Congratulations.
So, clearly this shit needs to be remade. And so it was. Again. And then again. Honestly, I cannot be bothered to keep track of Anno salvaging the remains of his diseased gray matter. There are fewer versions of fucking Blade Runner. And this, technically speaking, is what Death and Rebirth is, an hour-long recap, or retread as I would put it, of the first 24 episodes of the series that leads up to the end of Evangelion. But before we can slay that dragon, we have to catch everyone up with Death and Rebirth. So prepare yourselves for the longest, most drawn-out previously on segment in the history of ever. Death and Rebirth is split into segments that technically follow the chronology of the series, but it's framed so that it focuses on the characters one at a time. All the characters are appropriately summarized, though some are more bluntly put than others.
Let me introduce you. Shinji, this is the designated pilot of EVA Unit 2, the second child. Asuka Langley Soryu.
She's arrogant,
Egotistical.
conceited,
Freaky.
self-absorbed,
Twisted.
cold-hearted,
Schizophrenic.
saccharine,
Unsympathetic.
self-centered,
Totally absurd.
and just plain annoying.
So, cunt, basically. Because they're trying to cram a season's worth of stories into an hour, Death and Rebirth doesn't really have a coherent narrative, just enough scenes to establish important character moments and setting details. It's basically the Cliff Notes version of the show. Though it's impressive that they were able to cram so much densely packed narrative into 1 hour, I could probably do them one better. I could summarize the entirety of Neon Genesis Evangelion in one sentence. Shinji Ikari is fucking obnoxious.
I'm the one who deserved to be hit, not you! I'm a coward! I'm dishonest! I'm sneaky! And a wimp.
Shinji, you mustn't run away. You must confront your father. And you must confront yourself.
Ladies and gentlemen, Shinji Ikari. I'm pretty sure that everyone has heard about the self-pitying emo that is Shinji. Hell, people have been driven away from seeing NGE because of Shinji alone. His presence cannot be ignored, and his constant, introspective put-downs are nothing short of groan-inducing tedium. Even when other characters tell him to snap out of it and grow up, he's still unbearably self-absorbed.
So you won't pilot it?
It seems a little bit unrealistic for you to force everything on her. Don't worry. I'll pilot it.
But you don't want to do it.
Of course not. It's not something that comes to me naturally. But Ayanami and you and Miss Ritsuko...
Still that line of crap! This has nothing to do with any of us. If you don't like it, get out of here. Just forget all about Eva and us and go back where you came from. We don't need someone with that attitude piloting.
Here's the thing, though. We're not supposed to like Shinji. He's whiny, selfish, and acts like, well, an angst-ridden teenager. And given what has happened to him and what is constantly asked of him, it's not hard to see why he acts the way he does. His father is distant and seems to care more about the soft-spoken Rei than him, all the while he's risking his own life to destroy the monstrous angels that threaten the world. He's basically being forced to grow up at the worst possible situation. To the anime's credit, it never asks the audience to like Shinji, per se, rather it wants us to understand why he is the way he is. He is a reluctant hero, and being that means he has less than desirable traits. On paper, this kind of characterization would have been fine if the plot was about Shinji's coming of age. But it's not, really. Yes, there are elements of Shinji facing adversity in both his absent father and his own emotions, but when it's painted against the near-apocalyptic setting of the story at large, this inner conflict seems kind of moot. Yeah, Shinji, I know your dad was an asshole, and I know you missed your dead mom, and I know you feel like no one likes you, but... Holy shit, an angel's attacking Tokyo! Get the fuck over yourself, get the lead out, and kill this thing before it reduces everything to ash! See where the problem with Shinji comes in? The overall plot takes a back seat to his rambling diatribes when, by all accounts, it really shouldn't. It's his own personal psychosis against the entire fucking world. And again, this ties into the theme of him being an unlikely hero, but that's not an excuse. The thing about unlikely heroes is that they're typically more relatable and more down-to-earth than their classic counterparts. It's the typical comparison of Superman versus Spider-Man. One's a near mighty god that fights to protect the planet out of the goodness of his own heart, while the other is a wannabe photojournalist that lucked into his own powers and fights mostly out of guilt for not using them. They're both further characterized through what opposes them. Spider-Man's conflicts are typically more personal. His adversaries are more about going after him in particular, or after his immediate family. Whereas Superman is in constant conflict with planetary threats, again, generally speaking. Both types of conflicts are equally appropriate considering each character's background and how they're framed, but when you try to interchange the conflict with the character, you're not going to get anywhere. This is the main reason why Superman Returns failed as hard as it did. He's a god amongst men, therefore completely unrelatable. Why should we care about him feeling lonely when there's much more pressing matters going on? Same thing goes with Shinji. His daddy issues and abandonment complex may be at the forefront of his mind, but considering what else is going on, it's small potatoes and it only comes off as self-indulgent. Bottom line, get over it, Shinji! Not that Shinji is the only annoying character in the show, or even the most annoying. No, that distinction belongs to Asuka. I believe we've already been introduced.
Shice! Well, so much for synchronization. I could never sink down to the level of this animated turnip. If you ask me, the whole idea is impossible.
Hi, Asuka. I've never encountered a character so blatantly annoying and hateful than Asuka Langley Soryu. Written with the subtlety of a gay pride parade down Market Street by a guy who probably never talked to girls until he was 20 years old. It amazes me that Shinji's considered the GOAT of this series when, for my money, Asuka is the worst thing about Evangelion. Shinji may be annoying, but at least his annoyance sprouts from self-pity, which is more tolerable than Asuka's shallow pride. Death and Rebirth doesn't really delve deep into why Asuka is a braying jackass, or Jenny, as it were, but it's mostly linked to her witnessing her mother's suicide after going insane from coming into contact with an angel.
You are extremely afraid of any kind of initial contact, aren't you? Are you that afraid of other people? I know that by keeping others at a distance, you avoid a betrayal of your trust. But while you may not be hurt that way, you mustn't forget that you must endure the loneliness. Man can never completely erase this sadness because all men are fundamentally alone.
What makes her truly hateful, however, is the fact that the anime casts her in a sympathetic light. No character ever chastises her for her bullshit, and they will actually offer sympathy when her pride is wounded.
What's up? Are you happy that I'm having trouble with my Eva now? Well, don't worry, because when the next angel comes, our invincible Shinji will ride out and destroy it. We sweet little girls won't have to fight anymore. They only need stupid Shinji. I thought it was bad when he was nice, but when an emotionless wind-up doll like you starts being sympathetic, I'm doomed.
I am not a doll.
Not that she's grateful for the concern or anything. By the way, the human wisp with a voice that sounds like a ghost whispering down a sewer pipe is Rei, but we'll get to her in good time. Back to Asuka, her only redeeming value to the story is her relationship with Shinji. He's at once confounded by her and drawn to her, but mostly because of his teenage hormones.
So, you're just a kid yourself.
Sexuality plays a huge part to Shinji's coming-of-age arc, and in that sense, Asuka is the perfect, if not vexing, foil to Shinji. The character herself is an obnoxious brat, but in the context of Shinji's personal growth, she at least has a clearly defined place. But again, in the context of the plot, her presence boomerangs right back to infuriating. She's like the perfect storm of shitty characters. Maddening, yet necessary. The third of this triumvirate is Rei, and her place in the story is not nearly as well defined as Shinji's or Asuka's. She's an enigmatic, soft-spoken girl who quietly goes through the story, appearing every now and then, leaving an impact, but with not much clarity. Alright, get the kinks out, people. I feel a long-winded explanation coming on.
Are you ready? Go!
Though there was no specific statement over where Rei came from, it's hinted that she was created from the remains of Shinji's dead mother, which explains his father's attachment to her. She's an expendable homunculus, and only one of many copies that lie to take in a lab in the same headquarters that houses the Evangelions. The present count, there have been 3 copies used throughout the story, each one killed at different times throughout. Because of her weird connection to his mother, the relationship she shares with Shinji can be interpreted as edible in nature, and yes, for the umpteenth time we bring up incest here on this show. Because she knows of her expendable nature, she shows little emotion in her interactions with both Shinji and Asuka, with only the occasional smile or tear managing to crack through her emotionless facade. Like the nature of her past, her character serves mainly a utilitarian purpose, providing a catalyst that would spark the annihilation of Earth, and as such, she could be viewed as the most fully realized character in the entire cast. That, in a nutshell, is Rei Ayanami.
That's right! You're a rap master!
Compared to the other two, I guess I technically like Rei the most, but that is an entirely deceptive statement. There's nothing about her to like. With so much of this review talking about the 3 main characters, how come we haven't talked about the story or the setting? Well, it's because the story is more interested in the inner workings of these 3 than it is in anything else. Man coming into contact with God? Man surpassing God by enslaving his angels to do the bidding of teenagers? Oh hell, who wants to hear about that when we can listen to Shinji telling himself to not run away? I mean, the show does focus on the metaphysical stuff where it needs to, but the story and the setting is way more interesting than either of the 3 characters. Normally, I would give a nod of appreciation to Anno for not letting the backdrop of the story be the only driving force of the story, but it seems that he was too focused on the nature of the characters instead of letting the backdrop affect the characters. Nothing kills your plot quite like removing the narrative entirely just to have your characters speak obliquely in front of a constantly shifting backdrop.
I've learned how he feels about his work. About my mother.
No, you're wrong, Shinji. You only believe that you've learned. But people can't even really understand themselves, much less each other. Understanding 100% of anything is impossible. That's why we spend so much time trying to understand our own motivations and those of others. That's what makes life so interesting.
At the beginning of the series, Anno managed to keep himself in check, and the first few episodes showed a lot of promise and were actually pretty good. But then Anno lost it. Lost his mind, lost his marbles, lost his shit. What started as your typical giant robot anime quickly became a mess of introspective monologues and enough religious symbolism to last 5 Dan Brown novels. It's almost like Anno tried so hard that he went full circle and went right back to being lowbrow. There is such a thing as trying too hard, and man did Anno pass that and collected $200. Given it's the medium of animation, it's important to explore all possibilities and try to show people something they've never seen before. But when you use that same medium for this... That's pretentious. Oh look, she hiccuped! I am so glad that countless animators, cell painters, storyboard artists, and assistants spent their collective 18 man-hours to animate those 1,104 individual frames. And that's me being generous. And it's not like this is the worst the show gets.
My life was meaningful because of you.
Sorry. Hello. Oh, hey man, thanks for getting back to me. You got my email? Oh, great. Thanks. Thanks a lot, man. This means a lot to me. Oh yeah, I'm in the middle of the review right now. Oh, don't worry at all. You're not interrupting anything, okay? You know, it's that scene where Shinji has Kaoru in his hand while Beethoven plays in the background. Yeah, what is up with that scene anyway? Yeah, I know you didn't voice him, alright? It was a rhetorical question. Yeah, I'm a rhetorical question. Great comeback, Potsy. Listen, just send me the cameo, and you could go back to doing whatever you weren't doing. Alright? Bye. Fucking actors. So, what is the end result of all of this? What will meet us after all the incessant prattling, the eye-rolling symbolism, and overblown grandeur? Well, we're about to find out. Till next time.